So our theme, as we've already mentioned this month, is widening the circle. And this is not a theme that your worship committee or I or your staff cooked up, but rather takes its name from the 2020 report of the UUA Commission on Institutional Change. And they titled it Widening the Circle of Concern. That was the name of this commission. And I've mentioned it before, and we'll continue talking about it. It has certainly put a fire under our 8th principle work. So this formidable commission, a group of 8, back in 2017, was given a charge by the UUA, Unitarian-Universalist Association Board of Trustees, back in 2017, which was to conduct an audit of the power structures and analyze systemic racism and white supremacy culture within the Unitarian-Universalist Association. That was their charge. And of course, this incredible group of people, the members of the commission, knew that to do this, they would have to cast a wide net, which included all of our congregations. They would have to center the honest testimonies of people of color and other marginalized groups, and they would have to keep track of the patterns that they were going to encounter, right? And many illuminating things emerged. But one of the most stunning is that their commitment to a holistic approach, meaning that they resisted getting narrow about this audit. This enabled them to articulate their findings around how the history of this, our religious movement, has landed us in a bit of a theological and spiritual sinkhole, which keeps us drawing wide and open and inclusive circles, croissant circles. And it keeps us from true thriving. So this was one of their key findings. Their words: we UUs have not invested in developing the theological resources that could have allowed us to have a vocabulary of faith to meet these troubling times with. They go on to say in this commission that we have spent too much time comparing our religious wounds rather than healing them. And that right now, quote, what is at stake is nothing less than the future of our faith. It's bold. Maybe for some of you, this feels like bad news. It's okay. I know. It's big news. So for those of us who waited with great anticipation for this commission and their data-driven findings and recommendations to be published in 2020, a quaking wave of surprise rippled through UU congregations when before us was not only a near 200-page wake-up call to the daily oppressions experienced within our well-meaning church walls, but also, in equal balance, a call towards religiosity, spiritual wholeness, theological literacy. As our UUA president, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, says again and again, this is no time for a casual faith. This is no time for a casual faith. And so I return now to our month's theme, Widening the Circle. The name of the commission looking to this image, a widening circle that holds a lot of theological heft, this image of a widening circle. And I have to tell you personally that circles have a way of finding me. I was raised by an artist father a deeply reclusive, eccentric mystic of sorts who devoured philosophical and theological writings day and night and never had the capacity to articulate in written word what his studies meant to him, so he drew it, always abstractly. He would use those micro line ink pens. Do you know what those are? They're these black ink pens whose tips are so fine that a dot made with them almost needed a microscope to be seen. And he would start with small dots or tiny shapes different from piece to piece and expand them out wider and wider until some kind of a circle would emerge. Some had distinct borders, some didn't. He loved the symbolism of the circle, its cyclical nature, its symmetry and balance. And this love of his was everywhere in my house. So I guess I was raised with circles in his art, yes, but also in pictures of orbs and celestial bodies, mandalas, the Buddhist wheel of life, medicine wheels, Neolithic sun crosses. Those are circles with a squared cross inside. This preceded Christianity. They weren't the first to think up of a cross. Halos, spirals, labyrinths, the Taoist yin-yang symbol. And he doodled circles everywhere too. There was not a scrap of paper or bill or receipt or recipe that didn't have his circle doodles up in the corners, which are often simply a circle with a dot in the middle, or circles within circles expanding out and out. And I certainly have not done an in-depth study of every religion, but those I have studied all have sacred circles. Somewhere in them, it's there. And I sense my dad knew this. Isn't that so fascinating? The great philosopher William James, who wrote the famous book Variety of Religious Experience, sums up what is universal about a religious feeling by noting that religious objects and symbols draw upon a common storehouse of human emotions, and that religion is really a system of symbols that embody the moods and motivations of people in respect to the general order of existence. So simply put, religious symbols and mythic symbols, right? The religions have their roots in myth. Put our minds and hearts in touch with our own humanity and the humanity of our fellows. Yes, they help articulate the nature of the divine, God, goddess, as well. But the realm of the sacred also puts our minds and hearts in touch with our own humanity and the humanity of our fellows. That's the root of it, right? It's no surprise that the etymology of the word religion comes from the Latin to bind, like sinew to bone, to bind us to God, to sacred, to our own humanity and the humanity of one another. And really, if I were to take a guess as to why circles have been drawn across millennia, why they hold that common storehouse of human existence, why my dad seems to have dedicated his life to their depictions, is because there is no other symbol that embodies wholeness and perfect balance quite like the circle. And yet it is fluid. It can move. You can follow it around like the rotation of a wheel or a season cycle, the orbit of planets, the cycle of life, birth, death, regeneration, and ecosystem, the cycle of breath. It grips the human imagination, and it has for a long, long time. And when a symbol grips the collective imagination, we need to pay attention to it and draw from it and wake up to it and find ourselves and our fellows in it. That's what symbols offer us. I do not think that widening the circle of concern, that title, was arrived at simply because it sounded good, particularly when many of those 8 members of that commission were some of the most stunning UU theologians that we have in our midst right now. And maybe this feels really abstract to you, or you're having trouble right now connecting the work of collective liberation or even just the day-to-day care of yourself and your loved ones to all of this talk around religious symbolism and spiritual wholeness. You might want to say to me, I'm just trying to get through my day, Reverend Sophia. What am I to do with this and your talk of circles? And what I want to say to you is that now, more than ever, we all, there goes an air pod right at the God's way of asking for me to slow down, maybe. What I want to say to you now is that now more than ever, we, all of us humans, need to be cultivating meaningful spiritual practices and engaging in studies and doing healing interior work, finding our way towards a sustaining, expansive theological literacy that meets this moment. And I am sorry, but we can't white knuckle this anymore, my friends, or will ourselves as a people into this kind of widened, expansive, divine love. And I sense you know this and can feel this in the world. Spiritual wholeness is not something we're going to think our way into as much as we would like to. And again, this might sound super abstract and impractical to you, but I can promise you this, that if you commit to deepening your spiritual lives in the myriad of ways that this means, there's no one way to do this. And to do it as you would any urgent, life-threatening matter, for it is, you will, I promise you, you will begin to widen something in yourself. That is my message to you this morning. To feel a part of a wide and roomy circle where there is always a seat open and waiting. You will begin to widen something in yourself. Last week, our wonderful worship committee reflected on prayer. How good was that? I loved watching it back this week and what it meant to some of them who shared. This is a great place to start. I invite you to consider what it means to you as well, and to take it as a charge, to pick it up and ask yourself, what is prayer to you? It's a great starting place. You might want to consider as you move into your day-to-day and in the coming weeks where symbolism shows up in your life. Maybe what doodles do you draw? Ask yourself if there are symbols that maybe make your skin crawl. And ask yourself why. Can you trace some of them further back maybe to ancient eras and find your way into them in a new, widened, expanded way. Maybe in a way that speaks to your humanity or the humanity of your fellows. And what I want to also say is, can you believe me when I tell you that collective wholeness and a widened circle of concern depends upon the seeking and reckoning? It does. It really does. And I sense many of you already know this in some way. I mean, isn't this why you come to church? To deepen and widen and search for meaning and connection in this life? I would say let us not shut the door on this anymore because it scares us or we don't have the time for it. And I say that to myself as well. So this is a rich theme this month. And next week, we're diving even more deeply into it with our Social Action Committee, and we will continue on with it through to the end of the month and quite frankly beyond. And in the meantime, go get this report and read it. You can download it off of the UUA's website or order it in the bookstore. Lauren is posting the link to it in our chat right now. Thank you so much, Lauren. And in equal balance, look for circles in your life, in poetry and in art, in music, in nature, in spiritual teachings and texts. Consider why you think they titled it Widening the Circle of Care and why it is our symbol of the chalice is often drawn with a circle expanding around it. What's that all about? I hope you'll share some of this with each other because that is also why we come to church. You might want to start a regular gathering that explores some of this, for we need to explore this together now more than ever. And I hope that you will reach out to me if you don't have any idea where to begin here, because that is also what I'm here for, right? You are not in this alone. But it is time now to make a beginning. It is time now. I think I've said those words to you a lot this past month, that it is time. It is time. And speaking of it is time now, you might remember back in September, I see Lauren getting giddy right now. I know. Back in September for our water communion service and my first service with you, Lauren shared a song with us. She sang it so beautifully during her time for all ages. We Shall Be Known by Mamuse, and it has become a kind of UU anthem, particularly after Reverend Marta Valentine, whose words I shared as our call to worship today, particularly after she centered it in her sermon delivered at General Assembly in Spokane back in 2019. I hope some of you will register and go to General Assembly this year, by the way. It's such a wonderful way to gather with UUs all over the country. And that General Assembly was all about widening the circle. And as a part of the UU the Vote campaign, a recording of it was offered by the UUA. And it landed right at the time when this Commission on Appraisal was published, the one I've been talking about. And I want to share it with you now. It's stunning. And it's a reminder that it's not just us on Church Street here in Watertown. We are a part of a larger religious movement wrestling with this stuff and singing It Is Time Now. So let it be a call to action this morning, and also a reminder that all of us deserve to thrive, and we make the ever widening open circle together if we choose to. Well, may it be so, and amen, dear friends.